Welcome back to Big Riff Energy. It's episode 97. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. Beautiful day to be alive. Couldn't avoid it. We avoided it as long as possible, but they're talking about a typo negative reunion or tribute show. It was only a matter of time in this day and age. You know, every band from the 90s is doing a tribute show or an anniversary show or reforming or yeah, it was unavoidable. So I'm going to talk about that. I also got a really good fan email asking me about the Great Southern Trendkill. So I'll talk about that album. And it kind of got me thinking, what's the best Pantera album? If you had to choose, what's the best one? And I think my choice will surprise some of you, maybe not others. I've written about it in the past for Loudwire, I think it was. But yeah, we'll talk about what's the best Pantera album. Where does Great Southern Trendkill fit into their catalog? Got a couple more things to talk about, some new releases that I sort of spaced on. But first, let's dive right into this typo negative thing. I sort of stopped paying attention to the main like metal news sites, if you could call them that. I don't think anybody looks at them anymore. But a lot of you have been sending me this. It's kind of been unavoidable. And I had a weird dream about this subject, actually, so it seems like it's something I need to address. I guess Johnny Kelly from Typo Negative went on a podcast or did an interview or something. I haven't heard the full interview, but I read like a snippet of part of the written transcript, you know, and it seems like they were speaking hypothetically. If we were going to do something like the Acid Bath reunion or the Pantera reunion or whatever, how would we do it? And he was speaking specifically about people underestimating how difficult it would be to really accurately nail Peter's bass playing. So many people are focused on the vocals and stuff like that. And I thought it was pretty cool that he was speaking so highly of like the subtleties and the attitude of Peter's bass playing. But I read a couple different versions of it. It's been on social media. It's been on like the big sites and stuff like that. People started pointing out to me that I should read the comments. So I did. And I was kind of shocked by what I saw. But before I get into that, I want to say, I remember the day that Peter Steele passed. And it was one of those situations. It was unspoken at first, but then it became explicit. It was a situation where everyone in the band and all the fans, again, it was kind of unspoken at first, but we all just understood that this band is over. Like Typo Negative dies with Peter Steele. And before I crack into the weird experience of reading these comments, I think that's what should happen. I don't think they should do anything. I think this is I'm okay with a lot of these like reunions and stuff like that. The Acid Bath one in particular, I'm like totally cool with that. But the Typo Negative situation, it's like the guy wrote all the songs. He was, all the guys are important, but it's a different kind of situation. That being said, if they're going to do it, of course, we all hope that they do it right. And hopefully if they do it, they don't even call it Typo Negative. It's like clearly like tribute to Typo Negative, tribute to Peter Steele, something like that. Before I get into what I saw in the comments, the number one thing is you have to have Josh Silver involved, period. As far as the makeup of the sound of that band, what he was doing is either second most important to Peter or equally important. So if he's not involved, I really don't think there's a point. I don't know Josh, but from what I understand, he wants nothing to do with, not in a shitty way, but he's just kind of like moved on with his life. He's a paramedic from what I understand, works for the New York Fire Department and has a family, and you know, he was sort of on his way out even when they had their last tour. That being said, things change, you know, people get older, the way they look at parts of their life changes and feelings change about intense situations and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short, Josh Silver has to be involved or there's no point. So I'm throwing out a lot of disclaimers here, people, before we crack into this crazy shit. I don't think they should do it, period. You know, I think people's first impression of that situation was correct, that the band dies with Peter. Okay. B, they definitely shouldn't do it without Josh, because that's, I hate to say it, that's just like not, that has nothing to do with Typo Negative. If there's no Peter and there's no Josh, it's just not, you can't do it. C, I don't think Josh would do it. But man, in this day and age, you never can tell. We never thought we would see an Acid Bath reunion. The right agents and managers and promoters get involved. If Live Nation finds out that there's something nostalgic that they can make bank off of, people start seeing numbers and feelings start changing real quick, you know. So I'm going to speak about it hypothetically as well. People started telling me to read the comments. I don't really do social media. Like I said, I kind of stopped looking at metal websites and stuff like that because it's just kind of gotten boring. And I'm sort of just focused on, you know, making my own music right now. But I started reading the comments, and to my dismay, I think the most mentioned things were Neon Nightmare or my name. People are also mentioning October Noir a little bit. I'm not sure that band's still active. People were mentioning Dennis Pauna. I don't know how to say his last name. The guy that like mashes up different styles on YouTube. He's done a lot of like, what if Typo Negative played so-and-so, or like, what if Metallica Kill 'Em All was in the style of ZZ Top or something like that. Insanely talented dude. But I was shocked to see that the most mentioned name was mine. And this is not a humble brag. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm proud of that. If you'd have told me the day that Peter Steele died, like in whatever, I don't know how long it's been, 13, 14 years. Hey, in 13, 14 years, Johnny Kelly's going to start sort of hypothetically imagining what a Typo Negative reunion would look like. And the most mentioned name is going to be you. It's surreal. It's fucking awesome. That's the kind of stuff we all work for, you know. Makes me feel like I did a good job. But I had a dream like before I even saw all this stuff. I think I just saw the headline of Johnny Kelly talking about a Typo reunion. And I had this dream that I woke up and I felt very strange about it. And I think there was a turning point there. And then there was a turning point when I saw the comments. And again, I don't think any of this will even happen. But at some point I decided that if it does happen, I want to do it. So I'm announcing that publicly. If there's any kind of Typo Negative reunion or tribute show or anything like that, I want them to do it right. Like, there's no bigger fan of that band than me. So they have to have Josh Silver. If Josh isn't involved, I don't give a shit what they do. They can get Fred Durst to play Peter Steele or whatever. But if Josh is involved, I want it to be as cool as possible. I want it to sound as right as possible. And no disrespect to anybody else. It's interesting that Johnny was talking about the bass playing specifically, because there's a few guys that have done real cheap ass like Peter Steele vocal impersonations. But almost every Typo Negative cover that I hear, or any band that's trying to sound like Typo Negative, I don't want to name any names. I don't want to disrespect anybody, but some of these Typo Negative covers, I'm like, what are you doing? There's just subtleties. It's the exact stuff that Johnny was talking about in that interview. There are subtleties that I've never really heard anybody do right. And I think it's maybe Pete and I have the same level of Geezer Butler worship and adoration, and we've studied him so much that I don't know. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I read all these comments. I'm just telling you facts of what I saw. And if they're going to do it and Josh is involved, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And if they're like auditioning super famous people that aren't going to do as good a job, I'll take these motherfuckers out, man. It needs to be done right. It doesn't need to be done what's going to make the most money, who's like the biggest name we could put in there. It needs to be done right. So I just keep seeing these rumblings. I keep seeing footage of Johnny like in his practice room with a green light, and he keeps putting more and more typo flags up on the wall and stuff. And I just see where it's headed in the age of these nostalgia reunions and tributes and stuff like that. And you guys will have to, if they do it and Josh is there, you will have to pry that gig from my cold, dead hands. So, public record. Let me get to some questions here. Sean, this is such a great question here. Thank you, Sean. Hey, Nate, excited to hear some new riffs in the future. I'm curious about your take on the Great Southern Trendkill. Pantera is my favorite band, and I find it to be a compelling record. There are objectively great songs on some of the heaviest moments in their discography. Dime flexes his country guitar influence on this one more than any other. And then Sean mentioned some riffs, so I just plugged my guitar in. I got my station set up like perfect. Things are clicking, man. I got a station set up to practice the Spirit Adrift set. I got a demo station for writing new stuff, and I got the podcast station. I got this guitar stuff figured out. So Sean mentions the transition riff in the title track, which I guess would be like, because he's talking about country licks, you know? Yeah, that's one of my favorite riffs. Dude, so many good Dimebag riffs. I would say like half of my top 50 favorite riffs are Dimebag. As time has gone on, I wonder if the Abbotts really wanted to stand by that record. A lot of it feels more caustic than their typical Van Halen party attitude, and I think the record's more of a reflection of Phil's state of mind than the band's cohesive vision. Either way, still love it. Take care. Yeah, that's very insightful, and you're right. From everything I've read and interviews I've heard and stuff like that. I read Rex Brown's autobiography on a tour, and I actually think I gave it to Randy from Lamb of God, who still has it. We met him on that tour, and he showed up, and I was like, hey, I just finished this. I don't know if you care, but here it is. Interesting book. I don't want to say too much about Rex, but yeah, he had a lot to say about that record in particular. If you watch interviews with the brothers from around the time of the next record, Reinventing the Steel, there's kind of a narrative with the band of like they sort of lost some of they lost their way a little bit on Great Southern Trendkill. I like it. I liked it a lot more when I was younger just for how gnarly it is. And I think I appreciate it more these days from just the general sense of being a huge band. I understand Knocked Loose kind of just did the same thing. I don't really listen to them, but the idea of being like a huge band and your trajectory is just going up and up and up, and there might be a little pressure expectation to do something more digestible. But what got Pantera to the dance was Far Beyond Driven, which was the most brutal shit that they had done up to that point. And so they just went even more brutal, you know? I like that. I think that's really cool. At the same time, there's dynamics. Like you have Tens, which is a beautiful song, really underrated song on the album. That's one of Dimebag's best guitar solos. You have Floods, obviously. You got some live staples, but yeah, Vinny and Dime in particular sort of talked about they got away from like writing great songs that don't need a lot of overdubs and studio stuff, like just writing great live songs. And so they wanted to go more in that direction when they did Reinventing the Steel. Just instead of stacking a song, what I would say vertically, you know, with all kinds of crazy studio shit and overdubs and stuff like that, you pack it horizontally with as much like as many great hooks and riffs and power as you can, like stack that bitch horizontally so that you don't need to stack it vertically so much. If that makes sense. If you're looking at like a Pro Tools, you know, interface or whatever, Great Southern Trendkill is their most stacked record vertically. There's just like a lot going on. And the brothers talked about how hard it was to fully recreate the power and the strangeness and the ambitious nature of the songs live. And I agree with them, man. And I think like when Phil ranked the Pantera albums, I think he put this like second to last. He only put Cowboys after this. So I do think that you're right that this was more reflective of Phil's state of mind at the time. At this point in the band, they were sort of like fracturing. It was getting dark. The drugs and shit were getting out of control. I think Phil was on his own bus. The brothers were on their own bus, and Rex was on his. I could be mistaken. The band recorded the music in Texas, but Phil recorded the vocals in New Orleans. And he was getting, Seth Putnam to do all these crazy, totally undigestible, like background vocals and screeches and wails and shit. So I almost feel like there's a very subtle desire to self-destruct in this record. Like maybe the pressure of being such a huge band, you're like, or maybe even the pressure of like thinking, oh, am I selling out? Like we're not going hard enough. I'm supposed to be like this gnarly ass, underground against the grain metal guy. We need to go harder. We need to go harder. We need to go harder. And I almost feel like that idea became more important than the quality of the songs. I do like this record. I would put it towards the bottom of their catalog, honestly. Yeah, if for no other reason, like Suicide Note Part 2, the breakdown's really cool, but the rest of it's just kind of nonsense with the whammy pedal and stuff like that. It's just kind of like making the most obnoxiously like extreme unlistenable shit that you can, being in the position that they were in as a huge band. It's funny, right? But it's kind of that whammy riff is just like, it's not the riff from Becoming. I'll just say that. I do love the breakdown of that song though. Yeah, Hell's Wrath is really good. 13 Steps to Nowhere is really good. Like the riffs are insane. There's a lot of chromatic stuff, a lot of like chicken picking country stuff. The chorus for Living Through Me. Shit, I guess I'll just play it. I think it's been a while, but that one. Yeah, it's that, country chicken picking stuff. So yeah, there's great riffs. The songs just are a little like they recycle riffs in the last two songs. It's kind of weird. And the riff that they recycle and play 8,000 times is not really that great. So yeah, I would put this maybe at the bottom of the post hair metal Pantera stuff. I think I might even like power metal more than this one. Which brings me to what I think is the best Pantera album is the next one, Reinventing the Steel. I have written about this, like I said, I think for Loudwire, for some underrated albums thing. The other albums have higher highs. There are highs on Far Beyond Driven that's like some of the best heavy music ever made. Shedding Skin, there's not a Shedding Skin level of power in any of the songs on this album. But if you look at the track listing, this is the most consistent. There's no Good Friend and a Bottle of Pills. There's no like last two songs on Trendkill where they're playing the same riff a gazillion times. There's no like borderline rap rock / spoken word like there is on Vulgar Display. I would say Vulgar Display and Far Beyond Driven have higher highs than this album for sure. Trendkill probably even does too. The solo from Floods and stuff like that. But if you're going to listen to Reinventing the Steel, I would say listen to the remaster that Terry Date did. I think is 2021 or somewhere around there, 2022. But there's not a bad song on this. There's not a weak moment on it. And again, if you watch interviews with them around the time, they're kind of talking about how the band got fractured. the desire to be more and more extreme sort of started outweighing the desire to just write really, really good, hard rocking, memorable songs. And they went back to basics. They went back to the attitude and the approach that they had around vulgar display of power and stuff like that. Phil, I think, even kind of like revisited the sort of more empowering lyrics of vulgar display, sort of went at it that way. The record is a love letter to metal. It's like instead of a negative self-loathing, like hating everything, fuck you guys, we're the only real metal band in the world right now kind of vibe. It's more of kind of like a love letter to the whole culture, a love letter to the fans, identifying with the fans. And the music reflects that too. From what I understand, their relationship got a lot better. They went back to basics. They all went to Texas. They were like self-producing. And I think they even, I could be wrong on this, but I've heard this quite a few times. They went back through like the Cowboys from Hell through Far Beyond Driven section of their catalog, and they looked at like what worked and what songs were really great and really powerful and staples in the live set still, and looked at what riffs really kick people's ass, and they almost like wrote a new album that was like a greatest hits of all their finest moments to date, which I think is really cool. Yeah, it's weird to say. I heard like pretty much from the horse's mouth when I was younger. I was in New Orleans and my friend was telling me, Phil just told me that Reinventing the Steel is his favorite Pantera album. And I remember being so confused by that. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. But I think it's mine now. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the most consistent. So give it a listen if you haven't. I don't know what happened when it came out. I guess it like didn't resonate the way that some of the previous stuff did. I think 9/11 also threw a wrench in the works for a lot of the touring and stuff like that. But you know, nu metal was like peaking and all that, and they just made like a really pure, badass, old school metal album. Phil's singing a lot again. He's doing like the Far Beyond Driven Down One era, like scream singing, and it sounds really good. I don't know, it just rules. It's a fucking solid album. It's their most consistent for sure, and you can't change my mind on that. But yeah, Great Southern Trendkill, as much as I love it and appreciate what they're doing, I would probably put it at the bottom, maybe with Cowboys from Hell. I think Cowboys from Hell is a better album, but it's just not stylistically quite representative of what they became. But I'd put Reinventing the Steel at the top, honestly. All right, next question. Mike. Hey, Nate, loving all the Spirit Adrift and the new Neon Nightmare work. I'm 24, and you definitely inspired my writing style, and you've shown me many new bands and artists you talk about on the podcast. Thank you for that. I had a cool idea. Maybe you can do something, but I thought it would be sick if you could play and cover your favorite riffs throughout the years, starting from 1970 to present, or whatever year you want to start from. It would be cool to hear you play the riffs and just a brief reason why you like that specific one throughout the years. Thanks for the music you bring in my life, and excited to see you come to Chicago whenever that time comes. Thanks, Mike. This is a great idea, man. And I love Chicago. Chicago might be my favorite city in the country. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing for the next record, but there's a chance we'll be doing some of it in Chicago. I always use recording an album as an excuse to go to Chicago and see Sanford and go to Electrical Audio and do all that. But we'll see, man. Yeah, great idea. I actually didn't even think about this, so it's either that one or the next one. And I haven't played this in a long time. What is it? Oh, yeah. That's all of I Hate God's entire catalog in one riff, man. One riff. So I was just talking to my buddy Jason, who's going to be playing guitar for Spirit Adrift on our upcoming adventures. When you're young, you hear that riff, either one of those riffs, but let's just say the main riff from Iron Man, 1970. And it's the best, greatest, coolest riff you've ever heard, ever. And then you hear it so many more times over the course of your life that you sort of just take for granted how insane that is for 1970. As there was nothing remotely as heavy as Black Sabbath or Iron Man or War Pigs or, dude, especially like Electric Funeral, something like that. Next time I do this, I need to play the riffs before I'm like on camera too, because I missed a fret and it's like eating me alive right now. But yeah, I would say either one of those riffs in Iron Man or maybe like the main riff from Electric Funeral for 1970. Again, these guys with one or two riffs are inventing and like rigging the game. They're inventing subgenres of metal, and they're inventing metal, and they're doing it in such a powerful way that they're almost rigging the game that like every band in the future, it will have no choice but to draw inspiration from them, but nobody will be quite as good. There's never been a riff quite that good in that style. So I'm going to go with the second, not the main Iron Man riff, which is amazing, but that next one, which is like super, everybody knows the main one, but the next one is literally, they invented sludge metal with one riff. So speaking of sludge metal, I've been spacing on this because I heard it so long ago. I kind of like forgot when it was coming out. Album discussion, Dirtmother, self-titled. This was the first band that I ever saw when I moved to Arkansas and really kind of changed my life. But yeah, this is coming out on Friday, March 8th. They are playing an album release show in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So if you're in that area, go check them out. It'll be streaming, I think, on their Bandcamp, stuff like that. And yeah, they're selling CDs. For fans of the riff that I just played, that second riff from Iron Man, for fans of that. So yeah, and for fans of bands that were inspired by that riff, it gives me all the best vibes of like Church of Misery, I Hate God, Bongzilla, Weed Eater, Sabbath. There's even some moments that give me like Burning Witch vibes. So if you like Southern Sludge and you like really heavy caustic doom and Sabbath riffs, check it out, man. Dirtmother, self-titled, they're self-releasing it. The band's been around forever. Like I said, I moved to Fayetteville in 2006, went to a house party and saw a few bands, and they were headlining. Blew my mind. Yeah, live it was like every bit as good as all those bands I just mentioned. I Hate God. And never saw Buzz Oven live, but they remind me of that as well. Old friends of mine, very instrumental in putting me permanently on the path of the riff. So check out Dirtmother's self-titled album. It's not an EP, it's a fucking album for sure. I guess it's self-titled. Yeah, but it'll be out Friday, streaming on Bandcamp, and you can pick up CDs from them. I also wanted to mention from Austin, Mean Mistreater. Their album just came out. Let me look this thing up. Yeah, so they put a great album out last year called Razor Wire. This one's called Do or Die. They recorded it with my good buddy Jeff Henson, who recorded the majority of the last Spirit Adrift album and all of the Neon Nightmare album. Super talented guys, super talented band, very nice people, sort of carrying the torch for a type of music that's not really represented all that well right now, you know, just like over the top. It's like traditional metal meets borderline cool hair metal, you know, not like, I don't want to trash any hair metal band, but it's more kind of a Skid Row, that sort of thing. I'm not a huge Motley Crue fan, but it's more kind of like tough, tough hair metal bordering on traditional metal. Great riffs, catchy songs, great vocals, great solos. So yeah, somebody was giving me shit last week about like, if you don't know any good new music, you're not even trying. And there's not very much good stuff coming out this year that I can see, but it did kind of get me thinking. And I kind of miss stuff. I miss some more underground stuff. I forget about stuff because I've been listening to this Dirtmother record for a while. Like I said, forgot when it was coming out. Forgot when Mistreater was coming out. I'm dug in on my own riffs and stuff, but please check out those albums. Dirtmother, self-titled, out on Friday, and Mistreater from Austin with Do or Die, which came out, I think, a few weeks ago. Write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. If you guys continue to see articles where they're talking about articles or social media posts where they're talking about a hypothetical typo negative reunion or tribute, keep mentioning my name. It's very surreal. But that's what I was trying to do last year when I made that record. I was trying to really nail something that I had never heard anybody nail and do it with love and do it with reverence and respect. I noticed a while back too that there's like a Peter Steele Facebook page that I believe is run by his nieces, and they shared Neon Nightmare. So I think everything's cool there. I think that the family seems to understand what I'm doing. Jimmy Duff, who runs Duff's in Brooklyn, where we shot the music video for They Look Like Shadows, that was like the typo stomping ground in the late 90s, early 2000s. He's been hitting me up, asking for a copy of the CD so he could put it in the jukebox, which is like a great honor, and he's been really supportive. Pete's family seems to, I don't know if they're supportive, but they at least seem to understand and appreciate what I'm doing. So if they're going to do it and Josh is involved, yeah, you're going to have to kill me to have somebody else do that gig. So keep blowing them up. If you see those kind of articles and social media posts, write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. And I got some cool interviews coming up. The other two records besides these two that I'm looking forward to the most, I will be interviewing the creators of those records. One of them should be up next week. So I'm starting to lock in over here, man. The next album is coming together. The live set is coming together. And the podcast seems to be back on track. It's sort of, it took me a while to figure out the ideal setup over here, but I've got it. So write me questions, man. I'm back on it. bigriffenergy@gmail.com. And appreciate y'all, and I'll see you more than likely next week. Peace out.